Not everybody does it the way you do it or have done it in the past, and there's nothing wrong with that. All right, welcome to the Field Famous podcast, brought to you by Field Routes, a show that shines a light on the field service industry and the dedicated professionals that grind every single day on their journey to success. I am your host, Christopher Fasano. Before we begin, I want to remind everybody out there that the best way to receive new episodes of this show is to subscribe to your favorite pod player, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, just to name a few. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find the Field Famous podcast. The show is also available in video formats. If you prefer to watch this interview, you can subscribe right there on YouTube. And last but not least, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. This will help it move up so other people can find this show so they can learn from the stories you're about to hear. So our guest for today's show is Christopher Harkins, Regional Operations Manager at Pitbull Pest Control. Man, Pitbull Pest Control. Chris, are you ready to be Field Famous?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. So Chris was getting things in order and making sure his team knew what he was doing. And I'm sure we're going to learn about why that is and why he's getting calls all the time and getting calls. So it's part of the game and it's part of the biz. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you today, so you can tell your story. Chris, let's introduce yourself to the audience, right? Tell them who you are, where you are, what you do now. And then I want to, the first real question is how you got into this game, how you got into the industry.
So my name is Christopher Harkins. I'm currently reside in Las Vegas, Nevada, originally from Southern California. Grew up, just 2 miles away from Disneyland. So that's my stomping ground is Southern California. So just as many pests there as there are here. So,
but you didn't grow up in the industry, right? You didn't.
I didn't actually. My father is was originally in the commercial industry for preventative maintenance. So we did work for Sara Lee, Mission Foods, big name bakeries.
Okay. But no pests. This wasn't like a thing that your family did or you were doing or you said, I'm going to do this. No, this is just something you came into.
No, ironically, I was getting called to do things the pest control companies couldn't do, like put up air curtains or put in, fast doors or stuff like that.
Okay,
stuff that was more specialized to the industry.
I see. All right. So I have to ask you, so you grew up at basically the foot of Disneyland. Do people that grow up around there have a different take on Disney when it's that close to you, or no? It's you know what I mean by that?
You certainly have no concept of what you have.
But did you go more frequent? Because do you get discounts? You living in state?
So my grandmother actually used to buy us annual passes, and back then the standard annual pass got you in 300 days a year. So during the summer, not every day you could go, but I could just roll.
So you could just go let's go to Disney today.
Yeah.
So I could totally. You know what it's like? I grew up downstate, New York State. So I grew up right outside of Manhattan. So I could be in Manhattan within less than 40 minutes, no problem, and I could take a train, a bus, and get there. And when you have that so close, you don't realize, and then you go away somewhere. I remember going to Europe to visit family out in Italy, and all they talk to me about is New York City. It's all they want to talk about, and they're so obsessed with it. And then you sit back and you're like, wow. I actually had that I could see the buildings and I had the ability to go whenever I want. But like you said, you just don't realize when you live right with it. You just don't.
I try to explain to people that I have a very jaded on dealing with fireworks. They're nothing to me because literally they would go off every night all the time, at 8:00. You could literally almost set a clock.
So you were that close then. You could.
Oh yeah.
I was that close. That's crazy. That's awesome. Sorry, I had to ask that question. So. You got into this business. You were involved. This wasn't your first career step in your career, I imagine. So what I want to understand from you is when you got into the industry, what were some, what was the role? Is it the same role now? And what were some immediate differences or things that you had to say, okay, wow, this is different. I really got to learn this and that.
So I guess the easiest way to kind of explain how I got to the industry is I kind of was doing what my dad's business did, where we did preventative maintenance. I ended up working for a big box store and was in charge of an individual retail store. And, I came into my job. I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be an easy job. There's not that much to do. And on my first month, I'm like, there's a rat problem in this building.
Boy,
And
that's not
so,
what you want to find on your first
no,
job. No.
it really wasn't what you wanted to start your change in career with. So because of that, I basically got a lesson in how to be a ratter.
A ratter. Is that a
That's
thing?
what I call it.
Ratters? I got to be a ratter.
Basically part of the reason Pitbull kind of seeked me out post my time at that big box retailer is, they'd come in and be like, hey, there's this opportunity. And then they'd come up back within 48 hours and they'd be like, oh, that opportunity's closed. And they just were not used to that feedback loop. They're used to like, hey, there's an opportunity. And then it's 30 days later, it might get done.
I see.
Well, it's all just stuff like through my education in my dad's company, working for other, maintenance companies. Like, these are all things I can just hammer out in 15 minutes if you know what you're doing.
You know what you're doing.
If you don't know what you're doing,
right.
It might take you a week.
Right. So then you got, when you transitioned with Pitbull, then what was the role at that time? Is it similar to now? Is it the same? Is it different? Is it evolved?
So I have a much different role. So when I very first came into Pitbull, I was basically the utility tech.
Okay.
I did a little bit of commercial work just for them to kind of test me with. Yep. But when somebody needed a door sweep, it was always, hey, Chris, go do this door sweep. When somebody needed pigeon work done, hey, Chris, go jump on that roof and get that pigeon work done. Like, I didn't know how to do pigeon work. They just trained me, and then now I run that whole division basically.
So pigeons where you are is a thing?
Oh, it's a major thing, especially with solar panels. I will tell you,
oh man,
if you buy solar panels, it should be in your contract that you get solar panel screening, whether it's through a third party or through the installer.
I never thought about that.
It's like, I don't care where you live, something will find its way under your solar panels.
And it's so is it that like the world is their bathroom and it gets disgusting on the solar panels, or do they actually mess it up? Like what is the problem?
It's a mixed bag, right? Yeah, it kind of is. So obviously, under a solar panel, there are wires that are kind of hanging there.
Yep.
Well, that's where they choose to kind of put stuff up against them for nesting material, or even like something I've seen is like rodents using them as pathways, because typically some of the houses have like inlets where
so they can get in through a
so
conduit or something like that, like a hole. Yep.
So we do a lot of that work where we're just keeping pests out of those areas.
And what do? They just notice that their stuff's not working? Is that what happens? It gets to that point?
Generally it's the fecal matter. Like, it just, at some point, when you have 30, 40 pigeons living underneath your solar panels when it's hot outside, the amount of fecal matter, it just kind of starts to rain one day, fecal matter.
Oh boy.
And then if it, it doesn't rain that often here in Vegas, but when it does, then you have a huge mess to clean up because it's kind of washed it out.
All right. See, I always say if you don't need like pest control people, like, man, I was gonna say, like, there's some crazy things. Like, I think about, you think about pests, you think about, maybe you're biased, you start thinking about the pests you normally think of, like a bug or an insect, but there are things, man, there, and it depends on where you are. Those things can be different. Like New York City, we were just talking about Manhattan. They have things. Pigeons are a thing. Rats are a thing. Ratters, there are rats everywhere. In fact, I was just joking, I don't know if you guys saw this in the industry, like they wanted to name a rat czar to combat this huge rat problem that's happening. Rats are always a problem in New York City. So I don't know how you stop that, but so regional operations manager. Tell me about your territory. So tell me about what your how far you guys go and what you oversee there.
Yeah. So currently, we did a recent expansion in the last year. So we service most of Nevada as a whole. We cover the regular Vegas area is our home base, but we do cover basically from the south, Laughlin, all the way as north is Ely, which is pretty much an hour from Salt Lake City.
So it's a big area.
Yeah, I just finished it this week actually, and then I head all the way to the west to Tonopah and Dyer, which is basically on the California border. You have to drive through California to get back to Vegas.
Okay. All right.
And so that's our Nevada area. And then we cover southern Utah, kind of the St. George and suburbs.
Okay.
North.
Is this all running out of one place? You have offices around?
We have individual field techs in Arizona and Utah.
Okay.
But
all right.
everything's essentially ran out of our brand new office we opened this last year in
all right.
Vegas.
All right. Tell me a little bit about some of the challenges with that, with like a territory that's big and out there. I mean, you have an area that you service, and you get calls and leads as they come in, and they don't always come in the same place at the same time, and frequently they don't. So tell me a little bit about that. Some of the challenges logistically you're facing, and maybe some of the ways that you guys are looking at streamlining those routes in a world of rising costs, right? So to talk to me a little bit about some of those challenges.
Yeah, so in the last year, we really had to look, when gas was $5, approaching $6, just how do we keep operations, even, not even profitable, but how do we not lose money, right? So we went to a route optimizing software. It's really has cleaned up the routes. I mean, some of the customers, you get a little bit of adjustment from them saying, hey, what happened? And we just had to tell you, like, hey, some days if you want if you want service, you're going to have to do it on our schedule, because otherwise it doesn't make sense for us to come do your service. Right. And some of it's just kind of training the customers, right? Like, if you set the expectation that, like, hey, you're going to get monthly service, we cover you the way that we cover you with your 30-day warranty for our monthly customers, like, they're pretty willing to accept, like, hey, instead of getting the first Monday, I'm getting service the second Tuesday. Right. As long as they don't have a problem.
That's really what I was thinking. Like, on a preventative basis, if that happens, it's not but it's when, like, no, they're everywhere in my kitchen right now. That becomes like a reservice or a call or something's going on. I imagine that's where it could kind of throw things off a bit, because then people are like, I need something now, and that.
So with new customers, that's typically where that comes from. Like, our callback rate is like sub 0.5% in the last year, which has been great. Wow. I mean, we've really worked hard to get our callback rates, a lot of training, a lot of, drill down on what was causing the callbacks. Yeah. To get us to that point, because especially with the way gas was,
I think that's a killer, right?
A callback. I just look at a callback is like, how fast can I burn money? Right. Because for every minute I'm on that stop, A, it's $0 we're bringing in. B, it's $0 I can't bring in. Like, I can't be doing something where I am making money. Right. So it's like, it's almost double dipping. I look at a callback costing me like $350 an hour. That's what I look at what callbacks cost me, our company. So even if it's 10 minutes, like, that's $35.
Yep. So for someone who's out there and they're hearing that and they're like, man, you know what? That's so true. I got a problem. I'm noticing a problem there, and I'm looking at some of the data, and I'm seeing that that's going up, and I'm going back out more than I should have been or I have been. Are there obvious things to look at there in your experience? Is it typically representative of a particular problem? Can it be more customer than sometimes the tech and the job, where someone's a little more sensitive to something? Like, I imagine it's a bunch of things. What are some things and areas to really look at if you're noticing that to be problematic?
Setting expectations, right? Yeah. So the first thing you have to do with the customer is set an expectation. Like, if you have ants, which was our number one callback, I need to set an expectation with you that because of the products I have to use for ants, A, the problem might get a little bit worse before it gets better.
I've heard that all the time. Yep.
And B, like, it's not going to be instant. There's millions of ants in your yard that we don't see. We just see the 10,000 that have decided today was the day to pop up. Right. So just have an expectation that, like, this is a challenge. And at the exact same time, sometimes it's even bigger challenge. In my market, I have scorpions. Well, I have customers that have scorpions and ants. Well, the products that we use for scorpions don't typically play well with the
Right.
ants, and the products that work well with the
Right, they
ants
don't go the other way.
typically
Right.
play well with the scorpions.
Yeah.
So I sometimes have to tell them, like, pick a priority. We will drill that priority into the ground. We'll end that problem, but I promise you we will do our best to do both of them at the same time. But
Right.
it's not always that
Right.
easy.
Right.
And it's as simple too as is setting that expectation, and then there's great products that are leave behinds, right? Like, involve your customers. If your customer has an ant problem, like a Taro PCO is a super inexpensive ant station. If my customer has called me twice for ants in the last year, I want to make sure that customer has 2 of these. And then I want to document it on our service tickets so that when my CSRs get in there, they were like, hey, did you use your product yet? Like, we want to involve them in the process, even if it's not always the most comfortable part of the job. But having set those expectations with the customer, they're a lot more understanding.
Right.
Right?
I think the expectation in anything in field, whether it's like, lawn is a little different, pest definitely, in that these things are going to come back. It's almost like, and this is where I always have this conversation with every guest that I've talked to on the show about recurring and coming back and changing the mindset from being proactive to reactive in terms of like pest control and some of these services. But I think the concept is, we're going to take care of your problem for you. But, like you said, like, there's a lot of pests, and they find a way. And that's why we have to continually come back to keep it at bay and to keep it monitored, right? Like, it's never fixed. Like, you're never going to say, I've fixed your ant problem forever. Chris, like, you're all good. Like, enjoy your home now. You'll never see another ant in your house again. That doesn't happen, right? So I think people still approach pest problems like they can be fixed and never come back. So I guess that's where the education and the conversation comes with the customer.
Well, and like, I would say some of that still comes from the era of like DDT, right? You could treat your house with DDT once and you wouldn't see something for 3 years,
God.
just because that product stayed
like half-life
active
just lingered
for so long. And so, like, here we are, like, that's a product that was commonly used in baby boomers' households, so they still kind of have that expectation that that's what they're still going to get. But now we have to be like, you have to realize how bad DDT not only was for you, but for us, right? Like, we have to explain to the customers that, like, this is pest control and not pest elimination.
Right.
Like, I will
it's
never
right,
tell
right. It's
a customer,
right in the name, right? It's right in the name, control.
Like, I don't like the name exterminator.
Right, exterminator.
Because that's not what I do. I control your pest. I don't eliminate them.
Right.
Right. I can't make every single one of these go away.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, exterminator, the term, I don't know if it's used as much anymore, right? I mean, I don't know if there are companies popping up that are using the word exterminator, because you're right, it sets a bad precedent. Like, we're coming in to exterminate, eliminate, get rid of, and that's not what's happening, right? Yeah. And again, setting expectations right in the name. Going back to this concept of the route and the efficiency part, because it's a big thing. It's obviously a big focus there. Do you take so you're talking about how you restructure communication on the customers you have, but what about on the acquisition strategy of getting new customers in? Do you still cast that net and are just fishing and getting those leads, or at some point do you take a targeted approach and say, we have a big footprint here, we have we're only 50%. It'd be really nice to fill out that other 50% as much as we can before we get over here, and really do you get that targeted, or it's more of like you're just trying to get them in and then work it out once they come in?
So I wish I could say we were hyper targeted with our new customer acquisition, but we're actually won our local review journal's Best in Las Vegas, the gold medal award
Nice.
for pest control for the last 2 years. So that immediately just puts a big billboard,
that's
basically,
true. Right.
like for the whole valley. And
Right.
then the Laughlin people see it, and then
Right.
the people that are not in the valley, they still see it. And so it's hard to be really targeted, but I'm pretty lucky in that in the Vegas Valley, we have so many techs that I probably have a tech within 5 miles of you at some point during the day. Now, that might mean some challenges for my techs, but they're understanding, and they're willing to make those sacrifices when it comes to new customers. And sometimes the techs just have to say, like, hey, I need one of the service managers to come out and take a look at this too. Like, and sometimes I just have to be available to get out into the field to see stuff that, like, maybe it's a little overwhelming for a tech. Maybe it's, the scope of work wasn't quite what the customer said it was, right?
Right.
And so re-leveling the expectations, re-leveling, like, hey, this is a little bit beyond what we talked about on the phone with the CSR technician. So as much as I say, like, we haven't really been able to drill down, like, our growth has been quite organic in the last, couple of years, I would say. Ironically, COVID seemed to, in our valley, there were so many people at home, like, it really brought to the forefront that, like, hey, I probably should protect my house more. We were getting calls all the time with new customers during COVID.
Yeah,
I
saw that, during the COVID time, I was doing marketing for pest control companies at an agency, and we were pretty shocked to see it persist through and actually do pretty well. Like you said, people were home, and I think when you're home more, you hear things in your walls, right? You might not hear, or you see things that when you're away, you might not see. So we had, I specifically remember, because I used to listen to calls. I remember people being like, I've never heard this before, but now I'm hearing this sound, whatever in the wall. And I'm, and I remember talking to the company that I was working for. They're like, we were getting this a lot through COVID. It's just like, people that aren't normally in their home are now in their home, and pests are in their home, and now they know it, right? Because the pests know when they come back. So that's an interesting thing. I'm wondering if you can talk more about, people listening to this. We talked about this before we started about, people learning from other people's experiences. So I'm wondering if you can talk through some challenges that you still face on a day-to-day that you look at as real opportunities to meet head on and as you continue to grow, and if you can share some of those and how you work and approach them in your day-to-day with your team.
I mean, so probably the biggest thing I notice is that, like, I come as an outsider to the industry, in that whenever we finished a job for my dad's company, like, we did a recap on the job, right? So, like, hey, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? What can we do better? How can we save ourselves a little bit of time? How can we save ourselves a little bit of money in the future? I don't think that probably happens enough in the industry. And really, like, last year we had a major rodent escalation. And, like, it was my location because I was still a field tech. And I was like, I messed up a little bit here. Like, there were things that I didn't see. And I hadn't done an escalation at that scale before. When you're putting out 100 traps in a facility,
Eesh.
It sounds silly. It's like the things like, what trap is this? Like, making sure you number the traps, right?
Right.
Like, even though you're using a software program where you, like, I have a barcode, I can scan this, and it tells me what the device is. Well, you should probably still write what number it is on the device.
Yeah, on the device, yeah.
Like, because you turn around and, like, you got to be accountable for the devices with a map. Well, now the guy that's doing the map has to be like, hey, which device is this?
Right.
And it's the small stuff. It's never like we made, like, a glaring mistake. It's like, why did I waste my own hour of time on simple things that would have taken me seconds to fix?
Why do you think people why do you think the people in the industry don't take that time to look back and to ask the question, like, why, like, or how, like, you know what I mean? Like, why do you think that is?
because
It's
as
just
an
not part of the
industry-
day to day. Like what?
Well, no, I think as an industry, we're really reactive,
Right,
right?
right,
Like, because
right.
you never know. Like,
Right.
it'll go from like, hey, I didn't have a problem to, hey, I have a massive problem.
Right.
And that kind of just triggers in your brain like the go switch, right?
Yep.
It doesn't
gotta
doesn't
get there, I gotta
trigger
fix
the
it,
like yeah, it triggers the go switch. And like even for me, like you get a little panicky, you get a little worried, like it puts in the back of your mind like, hey, am I gonna lose this customer? Like this isn't supposed to happen this way. And turns out the issue that we had was caused by another vendor bringing something in, like at the end of the day I figured it out, but you still doubt yourself. Even I was doubting myself as a technician. Like, what did I do wrong? Like, I haven't seen this. I didn't know this was happening. And it went from like 0 to 100 in no time. So just learning to not be as like quick on the trigger reactive, but like think it out. How like have a like I try to explain to this. Have like a go bag for like an escalation. Like have a mouse escalation go bag that has the right lures and the right traps in it and the right make sure you have the barcodes, make sure you have if you're using stickers or placards, like have something that like if something happens you can literally go to wherever you store your product and just be like, if I grab this bag, I
have
know
everything in there. It's there. It's
I'm not
ready.
gonna slip up.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like, it's things like that can make, like, even the technician's level stress drop, right? Like, if they just know, like, hey, I can go to the office, grab this bag, and go, and I don't have to worry.
They're not all like, oh my, what am I gonna? I gotta get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then and that's kind of like the things we've learned is like, I'm notorious for having that field truck that sags real deep because my truck
You're loaded up.
has something for everything. And not every technician needs to be that person, but that was how I was trained in the industry. And it's a challenge being that guy. I would lie to you if I said it wasn't a challenge to be that guy, because like just keeping your truck stocked, if you're going to be that guy, is a challenge. Like, oh, what I use my last tube of ant gel.
Right, because you got to be
but
on
I have,
it. Right.
Yeah. No, like you literally have to have an in and out system, or you show up to your next job and go like, why don't I have the thing I need? I'm the guy who has everything.
Yeah, right. The
So,
guy
like-
that has everything is missing something.
Yeah. And sometimes the other problem is sometimes guys turn around and depend on you to be that guy
Right.
when
If you don't have it, whoa, man.
yeah. And so like I've always worked like in my dad's company, we had this trailer and we called it the Grow trailer. Like I could literally be told, hey, this company had a major shutdown at their plant. And literally if I hooked this trailer up to the back of my truck, I could go
fix
there
anything.
and I could generally fix anything. I had most everything. And so in my brain, like that's how I treated my trucks. But that's not how every tech needs to be.
Right.
And I've had to learn that like kind of the hard way too, especially being the manager now.
Yep.
Like when you're an operations manager, it's like not everybody can do it the way I can do it, but I can facilitate things with things like a go bag or an escalation bag, or things like, proper inspections of their truck on a regular basis to make sure they have what they need.
Right. That makes sense.
Like-
Yeah, it makes total sense. Yep.
Like I try and give our techs as much autonomy, and luckily our owner Joey, like that's something from the day you start. He has you read a book called The Letter to Garcia, and it's all about like self accountability. Like if I tell you to do something, it might not be the most clear. I might not literally teach you how to do it, but like know that if you do need that help, you should be empowered on your own
Right.
to
find
get out
it,
and
ask
do
it, go do it, and figure it out or learn about it. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
right.
and that's something like I really did, and part of the reason like my coworkers have said I've made the climb I've made because I've only been in the industry 5 years, is because like I have a thirst for just general knowledge in the industry, because like I came into the industry not knowing that much. And so I've had to learn everything kind of either the hard way,
right,
or have somebody
or
teach
have
it to
someone
me.
show it to you. And you had to be willing to find out or go find it or ask questions, right? Otherwise,
yeah. And the hard way is never fun.
No, it's
like,
not.
It's so much easier for me to go sit in a conference call with some rep to tell me about how their product works, and generally I get an education on a pest, right? So like, you tell me about how your product works, but really what I'm there for is like, hey, I'm really there more to learn about the ants that this product's really good about. Because if I go and I do 10 different classes where people try and give us products that are good for ants, I'm going to know a lot about ants.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people look at those classes as exactly that. It's a sales opportunity, right? And it's, if you look at the classes the right way, no, it's a continuing education of a pest, or a particular opportunity in the industry, right? So if you would have told me, I'd be crawling in attics looking for rats 5 years ago when I didn't work for Pitbull,
Right.
I probably told
Like,
you no
way.
Nope.
Yep.
But, I'm lucky in that, I have a background of working, in industries that, give me a little more knowledge about building, construction. And I try and provide that kind of opportunity and information to my technicians.
Yeah. Well, that's good. In part on them, right? Like you're in a position where you have people that you can, that are coming in like you did possibly, and you're going to help them through in a way different than the way you did it, which is important as someone in your position and a manager. It's, your job, you have a job, but your job is also to make sure that this group of individuals can thrive and be good in their job. And it's just much your responsibility, as them. So it's really, really important. As a manager myself, like one of the things this year that I really want to focus on outside of my day-to-day role is to make sure that they're doing the best they can. They're empowered to make the right decisions. And like you said, like you give them a little bit of autonomy, like do it. Go ahead and do it. Ask questions, make a mistake, as long as it's like a minor mistake and not a tragic error. Make a small mistake, learn from it, come back and talk to everyone about it so everybody can grow for it. I think it's really, really important to do that. I'm just looking at my time. I want to ask you something before we have to wrap up, because I would love to get your take on this concept of inspections of the home. And let me explain what I mean by that. So what I used to, as a homeowner, and then when I used to market for pest control companies, we talk about efficiency. This is like coming back to this theme and routing. I got to come to your house to look at a problem that you have, and people want that done for free. You're going to tell me what's wrong, how are you going to fix it? Then you're going to presumably have to come back out later and fix the problem. And I remember having this debate with a lot of companies saying, do you really need to go out there to diagnose the problem? Like, do you really need to go do 2 trips? Or can you just say, sounds like you have an ant problem. Here's our program for ant. This is what it takes care of. We're going to come out. We're going to get you on the schedule. And whatever. And then the last point before I turn it back to you is there something about that initial visit that psychologically makes the homeowner feel like what the problem is? I'm wondering about the inspections in general. Are they on their way out? Do you still do them? And just talk to me a little bit about that whole process.
So I don't do inspections traditionally the way you would think of an inspection.
Okay.
So, like generally you're going to call me, tell you have a problem. If it's rodents, I don't do free inspections. I had to kind of end that boat in the last couple of years because it's incredibly time intensive. And for me to come out and, set up a whole trapping system or rodenticide or, explain to you exactly with what is going on your building, it costs me an extravagant amount.
And you're not just going to be like, I'll take care of that for free. And then they were going to be like, I don't want it. Right.
I even have gone as far as to do the exact same thing with pigeon beds too. I can't justify coming to you for free. Now I can take a look at your house from Google Maps.
Right.
And try and help you.
Right.
That's kind of closer to what I think we're talking about.
Right.
In that,
just like the average
have to be
homeowner,
there?
you know, like I got an ant problem in my kitchen. There's ants coming out of the board. Like, do you come out? You're not going to say, I'm going to come out for free, take a look, and then come back and reservice, right? You're just trying to sell them on the phone first shot and come in, right?
No, I'm literally like, let's schedule you for service, and I'll send you a service agreement.
I got it.
And I need you to sign the service agreement before I come
out. Right. Okay.
Yeah,
so you have a paying customer before you're going out to the house, in theory, on contract. Yeah. Yeah.
And essentially, I can give you the option of a one-time service. It's going to cost you.
It's going to cost
probably
you more. Yeah.
2.5 times what it cost you for a monthly service.
Yeah.
You know, and excluding German roaches, you know, I generally, you know, can convert like 90% of those one-time services over to
a
reoccurring services just by explaining what we offer when you get a regular monthly service. And one of the things we do on a regular reoccurring service is an inspection of your home. Like, I'll let you know if you got a bad bushel. I'll let you know opportunities. Like,
right.
And that's what I'm telling them nowadays that they're paying for. What you're paying for is for me to come out, check your home, make sure that, you know, we can keep them out. Like, I have always looked at pest control maybe in a different way than a lot of people. I look at it like an insurance model, right? Like, what I'm selling you is not having bugs. I'm not selling you like that I come out and spray. I'm selling you, I'm going to let you know how to keep bugs out of your house with my inspection every month.
Controlling the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you look at it that way, it's just a different, and you set that expectation, it's a different, you know, expectation that the customer has from you too.
Right. I've heard that a bunch today. Is setting expectations is sounds like a very important thing. You know what I've also heard talking to people is that there is this one time versus recurring, this concept of I can come out one time, but it's going to cost you X. Whereas if I did the recurring, it's going to be this as a good method to convert or to change the way that person's thinking about one time, you know, a problem. Like you're saying, I think it's all about illuminating and making them see, like, I can come and do it one time, but most likely you're going to call me again down the road. So we might as well just keep this program going to control the problem.
Yeah, our one-time services are generally between 2 and 3 times as expensive as a single service. And I don't know if we're untraditional in that we only do 4-month minimum contracts versus year-long contracts. But because I'm going to charge you 2 to 3 times as much for reoccurring service, or you can sign a contract where you're going to pay for 4 and you know you're going to get 4 services, it generally tips them over the edge. And if I can keep them for 4 services, I'll keep you for a year, like 99%.
Right.
If I can keep you for a year, like 93%, I'm going to keep you for 5 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
the year, getting them through the year is the thing. I feel like that's always what I saw.
Getting them through the 4 services for us is the thing.
Is that it? Right. That's like an
if I can convert them at 4 years or at 4 months, the chances I have you at 5 years has got to be above 90%.
Wow. Okay. So it's just demonstrating that early value is really the key driver. That's what's up. I'm looking at our time. So it's funny. Sometimes I will look at that timer and the timer, it doesn't seem like it's moving. And then sometimes I look at the timer and I'm like, dude, we are at time. We got to go. So before we go, I have a bunch of rapid fire. So people have been asking me, like, can you do some rapid fire questions? I love rapid fire questions. I said, okay. So these are not necessarily related all to pests. So we're going to do this game with Christopher here. It's the Chris and Chris show. I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions, and they might just be the form of this or this. And you're just going to bang. You're going to give me off the top of your head. And we are going to start right now. You ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, here we go on Feel Famous Rapid Fire. Text or talk?
Oh, text.
Dark chocolate or milk chocolate?
No chocolate.
No chocolate, Christopher. All right, cats or dogs?
I'm allergic.
All right, then no, none for you. Take that off the list. Cats or dogs?
You know what? Just because of this week, I had 4 new puppies on my route. It's dogs.
Dogs. Summer or winter? The fact that you have to pause here.
I'll take the winter. I live in Las Vegas.
There you go.
It's
That's true.
115.
All right. Morning or evening?
I'm a morning guy.
Salty or sweet?
Oh, salty.
Same. I'm a salty guy. Favorite day of the week?
I like Tuesdays.
Tuesday. We'll have to have another possible interview to understand why Tuesday. A nickname you used to be called, if you had one?
Just my last name. I'm Harkins.
Harkins.
Forever.
All right. How long does it take you to get ready for your day?
Oh, bang it out in 15 minutes.
All right, same. I'm a quick get ready. Scale of 1 to 10, how good of a driver are you?
Well, if you look at my snitch box driver score, I'm the top of the company.
He's a 10.
So I'm gonna go 10.
With 10. Invisibility or super strength?
Oh, super strength.
Okay. Rats or mice?
Oh, rats.
Bees or wasps?
You know what? I love bees, so I'll pick the bees.
Gotta pick bees. If you were really hungry, could you eat a bug?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, no problems, no hesitation. Final question. Is this podcast the best podcast you've ever appeared on?
Absolutely. Since you,
right.
You've christened me. You've christened me as my first podcast.
You gotta say yes. Most people will say, well, it's the first one that I'm on. I'm like, well, then it's the best one that you ever been on. Man. All right. Well, I want to thank Christopher for coming on the Field Famous podcast. I just want to remind everybody out there that for more information on this show, you can go to BeFieldFamous.com and subscribe on your favorite pod player and tell your friends. And remember, your success is fame worthy. So come tell your story and be Field Famous. Christopher, pleasure, man. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure, and I love being a resource for our industry. So find me on LinkedIn, Christopher Harkins. I'm here to help if I can.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.